G'day guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. Today's video, I'm going to be discussing my thoughts on The Mandalorian. Now, as per the title, I am not a Star Wars fan. I've seen a couple of the movies, not in their entirety. The only ones I've seen the whole way through is a new trilogy because a friend wanted to go see them in the cinema. But I've only heard good things about The Mandalorian, so it got me thinking, is The Mandalorian a good show for a non-Star Wars fan? Can someone who isn't really familiar with the franchise or really a fan of the franchise actually get into this show? It got me thinking, so I decided, hey look, that's me, that applies to me. I'm going to go ahead and start watching The Mandalorian to see if a non-Star Wars fan can watch the show and actually enjoy it. So I'm going to be breaking down The Mandalorian Season 1 in a couple of videos. So this video is going to be pertaining to episode 1 through to 4 and my thoughts. The next one will be episode 5 through to 8, and we can do the same thing for Season 2. Now, in terms of my history with Star Wars, I like the games. I like the games a lot more than I like the movies. I haven't played all the games. I haven't seen all the movies. I know a little bit about it from, pop culture and being online and all that sort of stuff, but again, I really wouldn't call myself a fan at all. As I also said before, I have seen the last trilogy in the movies, and to me, it just seemed kind of goofy, like they weren't taking the franchise seriously anymore, and it's just kind of put me off just trying to get into the Star Wars franchise, because it seems like the people behind Star Wars themselves don't really care about the franchise. It seems like they're not really taking it seriously. Look, with all that out the way, how does The Mandalorian fare? Is it a show that is suitable and enjoyable for people who aren't a fan of the franchise? So starting with episode 1. Already I can tell that there is so much more love and care put into this show than in the last few movies. This was such a strong opening episode for me. Especially as someone who isn't really a fan of Star Wars, it gripped me and hooked me right in. It wasn't too lore heavy, it wasn't too sci-fi or anything to put people off, because I know a lot of people don't like Star Wars because it's too sci-fi for them. But this was very sort of grounded, and it's an incredibly strong start to the series. We're introduced to the Mandalorian, who is a bounty hunter, and already I can tell that the tone of the show is set by, the person being cut in half by the door, or the whole notion of I can bring you in cold, I can bring you in warm. It sets up this sort of emotionless bounty hunter who doesn't care what state he brings you in, he's gonna bring you in.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
It sets up the tone and it establishes the entire tone for the show to come. Now, another thing I can really appreciate in this first episode were the environments and the costumes. I can tell that wherever possible, they were shooting with practical effects and practical sets, and even using puppets. There were these little animals and creatures, and they could have just CGI'd these things in there, but they actually used actual puppets. I also appreciate the fact that not everything has to be this big spectacle in the first episode. Yes, you had, a shootout scene and all that sort of stuff with the Mandalorian and the bounty droid, which was awesome. But there was also smaller moments, like when the Mandalorian was trying to ride the blurg. And I don't know why, but I just found this small moment between a couple of characters to be really endearing. Just him trying to learn a new skill. I really hope there are more moments like this throughout the show. The cinematography in this first episode was beautiful as well. There was one shot, I don't know why, but I absolutely love it. It's toward the end of the episode when the Mandalorian reveals that there's the child in the little floating bassinet type thing. I'm going to put it up on screen now, but this still from the first episode is absolutely gorgeous to me. So again, the first episode I would say is a very, very strong start, and it will be enough to pique your interest even if you're not a Star Wars fan. Now, if I had to go ahead and give this a rating, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Again, this is coming from someone who isn't a Star Wars fan, giving this an 8 out of 10, so I am very, very shocked as to how much I'm liking this. On to episode 2, we're moving on to The Child. So this episode picks up right where the first one left off, where it was revealed that there is the child in the bassinet. But again, I'm really, really impressed with them using practical puppets. There's only a couple times where they're using CGI for him, but you can tell that they're actually using a physical prop. Again, this translates really, really well over to camera, and it just creates that extra level of immersion. Again, with the cinematography and the way that this episode has been shot, it was done in a really intelligent way. One of the things that I can really appreciate is when they're coming up to a cave in the second episode, you can see that enemies are reflected in the back of the Mandalorian's helmet. He obviously can't see that, but it conveys to the watcher that there is impending or looming danger on its way. It's a really good way to communicate danger approaching to the viewer. So the Mandalorian tries to get onto this big convoy type thing. His ship has been stripped, and eventually he has to go ahead and find this egg to do a trade to get his ship parts back. Now, I'm not a big fan of sort of filler episodes or fetch quest type things, but this still managed to make it interesting. So eventually he finds this big space rhino type thing. That battle was really, really good as well. And we also learn that Baby Yoda, or the child, can actually use what I'm assuming is the Force to go ahead and hold this thing up in the air before it kills the Mandalorian. So not only do you get a good fight with this space rhino type thing, but you also learn that the child has these Force powers. There was also a great amount of tension in this episode. One of the standouts was when he was going into a cave. You hear a slight roar, and then the camera just starts panning, and then you see this eye open. The creatures so far in the first 2 episodes have all been wildly different, so it makes it very, very interesting for someone who isn't a fan to watch this and just see all the different creature creations and how everything looks. It's the imagination behind the show is already blowing me away. Now, as I said, look, the cinematography and action were great in this episode, but I'm just not a fan of these little filler fetch quest type things. This whole episode revolved around getting an egg. It was okay. It definitely was not as strong as the first episode. So if the first episode was an 8 out of 10, this would probably have to be about a 6.5 to 7 out of 10 for me. It's still good, but nowhere near as strong as the opening of the first episode. Alright, now moving on to episode 3, The Sin. This episode was fantastic. It added a whole new layer of complexity and depth to the Mandalorian character. We get a little bit of a flashback into his childhood, or lack thereof. And we also start to see the emotional walls being brought down for the Mandalorian, where he's come from this emotionless, unempathetic person to someone who actually cares about something. He shows a level of concern for things, people, the child. This, again, adds so much more depth to the Mandalorian character for me. It was fantastic. So the episode opens up with the Mandalorian child approaching a planet. This was obviously the planet where the Mandalorian has to go ahead and return the child, which was the target. Now you see, as they're sort of approaching the planet, the child is pulled off the little ball off the gear stick and he's playing with it. Mandalorian takes it off him, saying it's not a toy, and there's little exchanges like that where you can see that the Mandalorian is starting to warm up to the child. So the Mandalorian obviously offers off the child and takes the bounty, or the payment for the bounty, but he then again shows concern to say, what are you actually going to do with him? This is obviously great in a couple of parts, because one hand, it shows that the Mandalorian actually cares and provides emotional depth, but it also asks the same question that the audience is asking at this point. We see that through the payment of that bounty, he went ahead and got this awesome, sweet looking new armor. It looks so good. And before leaving, he goes ahead, breaks in, and basically steals the child back. In this fight sequence, we see that the Mandalorian is very skilled in combat, stealth, all that sort of stuff. And it's really good to see his kind of skill level in combat. We have had a couple of fights beforehand, but we haven't really seen too much stealth really. But this was a really good mixture of both stealth, using his arsenal of weapons, and just getting his hands dirty in a combat fight. One of the things I think this show does really well is sort of conveying emotions, especially through the Mandalorian. He has a helmet on the whole time. I haven't seen his face in these first 3 episodes, and he's been able to show so much thought and expressions of feelings just through body language. So I think that the way that they've shot the Mandalorian and the way that he's using his body to convey certain emotions has been done really well. So toward the end of the episode, we get to a standoff where the Mandalorian is walking out with the child. He is then surrounded by a whole bunch of bounty hunters where he's offered to say, look, there's no way out of this. And basically your only choice to get out of this is to put the child on some droid or something like that and discuss terms. Mandalorian goes ahead, looks at the child, and decides, fuck it, we're gonna go out in a gunfight. So he completely just goes all out, and when all hope seems lost, the other team of the other Mandalorian come in and save his ass and basically fight off the other bounty hunters. Again, this is really cool because it shows that the Mandalorian has people to support him. There is an established code with the other Mandalorian team as well. So it's just adding more and more things to the show, which I'm really enjoying. Right before the episode ends, Mandalorian looks at the child, takes off the little ball of the gear stick, and gives it to him as a toy. Once again, showing the Mandalorian is caring for this child, emotional depth, character development, all that good stuff. This episode was about a 7.5 to 8 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed it. It's up there with the first episode. Now, the last episode for this video is The Sanctuary, episode 4. This episode opens up with the Mandalorian and the child going to a planet just to lay low. There's a small village in here that gets raided by soldiers. I'm not sure if they're part of the Empire. Someone needs to fill me in on this. They keep saying that the Empire is down or it's completely gone, but then they keep saying that these soldiers are from the Empire, so I'm not too sure whether the Empire is still a thing or not. Please do let me know in the comments down below just to clarify that point. But the Mando and the child arrive on this planet and are introduced to Cara. Cara goes ahead and hands the Mandalorian his ass on a platter. Absolutely just destroys him in combat, which obviously, because we've seen Mandalorian fight in such a skillful way, that then conveys the message that Cara herself is a really skilled fighter. We then find out that Cara was an ex-shock trooper. I have no idea what the hell that is. It sounds intimidating, but obviously she's good at combat. So the Mandalorian was going to go ahead and leave the child here because this planet could offer a better life. However, you see at the end of the episode, another bounty hunter has been tracking the child. And obviously with that, the Mandalorian makes that deduction that this planet is not safe. There are going to be more bounty hunters on the way. If this one found their way to this planet, more are on the way. So it's up to the Mandalorian to go ahead and take the child and basically protect it to make sure it stays safe. This is also great because it establishes an ever-present looming danger over the child. There are people who are constantly hunting the child now. It just adds another level of dynamic and danger to the situation, again, making the show a lot more interesting. I'd probably give this episode about a 7 out of 10. Not the best one, not the worst, but still very enjoyable. So from the perspective of a non-Star Wars fan, is this show worth watching? I'd say absolutely. In the first 4 episodes, I'm absolutely loving this show. I really appreciate how it's very welcoming to new viewers. And what I mean by this is that from the first 4 episodes, I was able to start, without having much knowledge of any kind of Star Wars lore, I was able to start this show, first 4 episodes, understand exactly what is happening. I'm sure I'd get a hell of a lot more out of it if I'm familiar with the pre-established lore, but it's really good for new viewers to just jump in and be able to understand. You know, it's not very lore heavy, but things still look sort of out of world. The creatures are very interesting to look at. The combat's really good. So for someone who gets put off by too much sci-fi, this is a great show to get into. It's very grounded in its approach to being a good Star Wars franchise show. This show did actually surprise me with how much heart it actually showed for the Mandalorian and the actual Mandalorian show itself, just through its character interactions, the dialogue, the development, and the cinematography itself. It feels like the franchise is getting the care and attention that it really should have, especially in the last couple of movies. They kind of came across to me as a bit of a joke. Like it was very sort of shattered. People didn't know what they were doing. There were different ideas and just this tug of war of ideas for the last couple of movies. This show feels a lot more refined. It feels like it has a roadmap as to where it wants to go. The characters are all likable. They're all very interesting. And as I said, it just feels like this show is getting the care and attention that the Star Wars franchise desperately needs at this point in time. So as a non-Star Wars fan, I would absolutely say go ahead and start watching this. I was surprised by how much I liked it. But that's the video for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. I will have a video up for episodes 5 through to 8 to finish off the season. If you do like this series, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. It definitely does help out. But take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Alright, bye.